Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacalyn. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacalyn at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. I'm the president, founder, and chief listening officer here at our network, where we currently have 29 live shows. And we are hosting World Jenny's Day, a 17-hour live event on October the 10th. So do join us for that. Our show today is the United Kingdom news and culture. And we've got a small but savvy panel today. Let's welcome them. We've got DIANN FLOYD joining us from Texas. Hello.
Hi, great to see you.
Nice to see you as well. And joining us from London, it's the brilliant global broadcaster with a 3B audience. Let's welcome him, Mr. Ian Palm-Turner. Hello.
Well, this is Hurricane Ian reporting to you, from a rather calmer but colder London.
By the way, Ian, have you ever reported on the weather in your extensive experience as a journalist? Was that ever part of your role?
Yes, I remember one occasion many years ago now, when I was a photographer, and it had been snowing, and it had been snowing right across the whole of the southern England, and I needed to have a photograph that highlighted what people were doing during the snow, to create a front page picture for the city newspaper I was working for in London. So my former wife's niece skied, so I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a picture of this young lady skiing up the hill. That's going to be my picture of how she gets to work. So I send this, so I take this up, and it becomes front page on the Evening Standard in London. It's a very big city newspaper. And the next thing I know, I'm getting calls from all over. All the media organizations are saying, where can we get hold of her? Because we want her to ski for us as well. That was a sort of tough one, because sometimes you had to sort of slightly envelop a weather situation or a news situation to fit the day, and sometimes you had to have something like that. So it always goes to show that there used to be this adage in a place called Fleet Street. Fleet Street was what was commonly known as the Street of Shame. It's where all the journalists for all the national newspapers used to live, work, and drink together. And I was part of the Fleet Street maternity fraternity, I should say, at the time. And the reality was that we had an adage in Fleet Street: is never spoil the story with the truth, and on that particular occasion, it doesn't go down well in American journalism, I get it, but sometimes, many years ago now, sometimes we perhaps played with the truth slightly in order to fill up the pages.
Wow, that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. And I just have one more question about weather, and then we'll get into the United Kingdom and news. So in your role in that particular scenario, is that less pressure than covering a worldwide event like the Queen's funeral?
I mean, it's totally different, because basically with sort of things like that, sometimes, this was really a picture of a day. It was just an event that would only be going, say, 2 or 3 days. The snow melted away very quickly, so it wasn't much of a problem. I think with the Queen's funeral and with all that was going on over that week, it was very interesting to show how many countries were interested in the first place, and there was a massive amount of interest. I think from the figures, we got on the show that I did, and so we did a 6-hour, 40-minute show that I was part of a 3-anchor team on a Sky channel that went global as well. Well, people were picking up our feeds from different channels across the world because we were trying to do a more upbeat, rejoice, don't, not remorse so much, rejoice in what's going on. And a lot of feeds picked up on our feed because of that. But it was reckoned in the end about 5 billion people. There's only about 7 billion, I think 7.5 billion people in the world. So I had to give a speech last night on peace. And I thought, the reality is that with something like this, it brought the world together, wouldn't it be great if, not that I want a funeral every week, but if we could find ways of rejoicing what we have and bring the world together that way.
Amen. I agree 100%.
I love this. Yeah.
Last night I thought it was going to be a pretty tough crowd last night. Because I hadn't made any preparation for it at all. I had to, because I have a knee injury, I had to have a hand to sort of put me up onto stage. And so I made a joke saying that it takes me longer to get up to the microphone than it does to give the speech. So I always use that just to get the sympathy vote more than anything.
Did people laugh?
Oh yeah, always go for the sympathy vote to start off with when you're giving a speech. It sort of warms the crowd up for anything else, and you can see who laughs and who doesn't. It gives you an indication of who to focus on, if you like. And it was a pretty tough crowd, I have to sort of say, because it was quite a lot. I mean, a wonderful audience, though. I have to say, a wonderful audience. And it was at the International Peace Federation Centre in London. And a large proportion of them were from the Muslim faith. They were quite a few, I would say, were quite politically active as well. There was a former army general from the Pakistan army that was responding to what was happening in Afghanistan. There was a lot of reaction to a cleric, a Muslim cleric, who was talking about different issues that were happening to both Muslims and Christians across the world. And then he was questioned on what did he think of the Iran female situation at the moment. And it was quite an interesting time. And so, do you know what? It's the strangest thing. I think I realised now I could, well, as you can probably see now, I can talk on anything. And so I just started talking about, first of all, how people had come together and how this could create peace solutions as well by using broadcasting techniques, bringing and connecting people together. Would be a wonderful method of actually, bringing peace, bringing more communication, bringing people's understanding of different faiths, different issues, why they think of those issues as well. And so it went on. And so I reckon I did about 15 minutes, something like that. And I came off and the cleric was, patting me on the back, and I'm thinking, okay, well, that's interesting. And at the end of the meeting, it took me about 45 minutes to get out the meeting. I was crowded around by people wanting to take my photograph and talk to me about the issues. And it was, in some ways, it was quite a strange thing, because there was one gentleman who had given a Hindu rendering. And he was almost doubled up, problems that some people have where they virtually are doubled up. And so I'd sat down by this time, and so he was face to face with me, you know, and he's saying, I've got to meet you. I've got to meet you. You know, when can we have a meeting? And I'm thinking, have I touched people's lives last night? I don't know, but you know, I got a lot of response last night, and I think the coordinator, the thing that got to people was that we talked about peace.
You did touch people's lives when that many people come up to you. Absolutely. And I bet because you were speaking so much from your heart that people knew it and they just were surrounded. You probably had a gorgeous aura all around you when you were talking.
Yeah. I mean, for me, you know, and I've said this to other people, how I see myself is just a grain of sand in the desert. That's how I see myself, quite honestly. You know, I don't see myself as I think I have a good way of creating messaging, and that seems to come naturally to me, you know. But you know, it always surprises me. It really does surprise me when people want their photograph with me or whatever, you know. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm just a normal person, you know. You know, there's so many more powerful people in that room last night. There were some very powerful people who just wanted to talk to me, and I'm thinking, it goes back many years. It goes back to a time when I was giving advice to the British government, to ministers, cabinet ministers and the like, politicians. And there was a voice in my head saying, make sure everything you're saying is accurate and will create positive reaction, because you could be changing history. And I'm thinking, it's only me. You know, it's only me. You know, you know, I'm not clever. You know, my brother was much cleverer than me. I don't think I'm intelligent at all. I just think I have common sense, and perhaps, you know, perhaps that's what I can bring to a discussion.
Sometimes common sense is more important than intelligence.
Yeah, I think so, because I think there's lots of very intelligent people out there, but sometimes they can't grasp how to get out of a situation. I mean, the situation, you know, in London this week, I was just saying offset, you know, one of the issues I'm facing this week, and there is a lot of discontent is probably the right word. There's a lot of discontent in London at the moment, how our government is handling the financial affairs of the country. And, you know, I've seen it in the past where when these types of things happen, and bearing in mind Liz Truss, who's our new Prime Minister, she's only been in office. I mean, in some ways, I feel sorry for Liz Truss, because, you know, on the Monday she kissed hands. That's the real thing to do, to become Prime Minister with the Queen. 2 days later, she was dealing with the financial crisis, and we have a crisis of how to pay for our energy in Britain at the moment. And right in the middle of this going on, the Queen dies. You know, it's like, I bet she sort of went home that night and thought, what else could go wrong? And then all of a sudden, you know, now she's found out what else could go wrong, you know, and they're all hiding now. That's the worst part of it. They've all decided now not to speak out on the subject at all themselves. So it is a really strange week in London, because the opposition party, the Labour Party, have had their party conference this week. And now most pundits, political pundits, are saying this is a shoo-in for the Labour Party at the next general election, because the Conservative Party, the party in power at the moment, have made a mess of the situation.
Politics.
And you have been a political correspondent for a long time, correct?
Yeah. you know, and so I go all the way back. I'm trying to think. I think the first Prime Minister I ever got in touch with would have been about 1974. So I don't know how far back that you're probably better at maths than I am, but it sounds like a long time to me, you know. You know, it's and in those days it was a Prime Minister called Harold Wilson, and Harold Wilson didn't live in number 10 Downing Street, the home of the Prime Minister. He lived in an apartment next to a park in South London. And so if you ever wanted to, and this shows the difference in those days, you could actually go to his apartment. You couldn't go before 8 o'clock. That was the rule in the morning. And so I was working for a city evening paper. So our first press time would have been about 9 o'clock in the morning. And if it was a minute past 8, you could ring his doorbell, and his wife would answer the answer phone, and she would say, she would ask, "Who are we?" We would say which newspaper we're from. "What's the question?" We would say the question, and then do we take sugar in our tea?
Very important.
This is détente politics, you know. So then we would they would push the entry, door, and so we could go in. And Howard Wilson used to come in his dressing gown and answer the question. We'd have a cup of tea. It would last 5, 10, 15 minutes, and then we would go and report for the day. It was all very gentlemanly done, you know. This was a different type of politics. Today, to try and get to the Prime Minister, you have to go through about 8 circles of defence, and I'm not surprised because they make so many mistakes. But the reality is that it's a totally different world now, you know, and it was partly what I was talking about last night. How do you create peace? And partly, my remit is that you can create peace through connecting people together, TV shows, television channels, and so forth. You can connect people together, but there has to be another part to it, and that's memorable signage, memorable messaging that can go out as well, sound bites. And so that's partly what I do, a sound bites. And then I told the story of the Prince George story, which I think I probably told you about before. It seemed to resonate with the room, because then I got messages back sort of saying, "We really enjoyed your Prince George story." So obviously some people were listening last night. They hadn't fallen asleep, but so it just goes to show that I think if you have heart and you have a voice, however big the voice is, and that's what I enjoy. If you can enjoy what you do, I love what I do. And people say to me, "You're 71 now, but why don't you hang up your microphone and go to Florida?" And obviously with Hurricane Ian, it perhaps it was a message from above. I don't know, but I think the reality is that when you love to do something, it's your passion as well. With DIANN, your passion is with books, and you do it brilliantly. Jacalyn, the television, and you do that brilliantly as well. The three of us. I think one of the best things about this show is we talk about our passions, and I think that is so important, to be able to talk about passion, to be able to talk about what makes us feel good, what makes us get up in the mornings, what makes us excited, what makes us motivated to I still want to change the world. And by goodness, I'm going to do it.
Yay. Well, Ian, I just want to comment on that. So I changed my career 2 years ago, and now I'm doing this, and this is my passion. And Diane, I know you've been writing for a number of years, but Ian, you've been an international global broadcaster, journalist, a photographer for so many years. So have you been as passionate about your work then as you are now?
I've loved every single day of my working life. It's as simple
That's
as that.
wonderful.
You
That's a
know,
gift.
there's been many ups and downs in my life. You know, I think that the one thing that journalism taught me is responsibility as well. So, you know, I've had so many great times, so many enjoyable times. You know, I get invited things now, and with Helena, you know, and you know, we're talking at an event at the Institute of Directors tomorrow night. So we do things like that, and that's the luxury, that's the pleasure part of doing what we're doing. But then there comes moments like you know, the past week or so with, you know, with the Royal event, where you have to knuckle down and do your job. You know, excuse me. People expect you to do it. They don't hope you're going to do it. They expect you to do it. They don't think about how old I am. They don't think about calling me up so that I can do a show at 3 in the morning. They expect me. And so, you know, so with what I do comes responsibility at times as well. So that, you know, when there are times of international stories like that, you have to step up to the plate. You can't think about preserving sanity in some cases, because, you know, in the end I was starting to feel like Count Dracula. You know, I was going out at night, bloodshot eyes, you know, swooping through parks at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm thinking, oh goodness, please let there be security around just in case. Just in case, you know, it's it was just one of those things, and you know, we did some great broadcasts, you know, across the world as well at the same time. But I think so. There are times when you have to be responsible. I was talking recently at an event, and we were talking about communications. That was one of the topics at a pretty big convention that I talked at. And there was one person there who, bless his heart, I mean, he talked for about 40 minutes on what he did. He was only supposed to be talk for 10. You know, and we couldn't stop him. And I was invigilation, I couldn't stop it. He was in flow all the time, talking about how good his studios were in India. And then he was sort of saying, you know, the joyful side of things, and you know, that but if, you know, if any serious things happen, you know, you can run away from that. And I said at the end of it, we can't. You know, journalists run towards serious events. We have to run towards war zones. We have to run towards what's going on. We can't run away. And that is the essence of journalism, is responsibility, is to be able at times to, although it can be a very frightening experience, you know, you have to do it. You have to sort of forget where you are, and just physically, because a lot of the time then you're actually reporting history, you know, and history needs to be reported.
So it sounds like you put your own safety aside and your own feelings, and you just put your mind into what it is you're doing, because it's you have a higher purpose.
You have to, because it's my commitment to the wonderful profession I have. You know, it's a commitment that has been lifelong. You know, there have been times when I've taken great chances, and you know, fortunately, You know, although I was hurt a couple of times in riots, you know, it didn't deter me at all. And I think the biggest fear when I was a photographer, you know, covering hard news, was not to get the photograph. That was a much bigger fear than personal safety, because you know, in the days when I first worked in Fleet Street, and I was a freelance for 2 or 3 years actually. The reality was, you know, if you didn't get the picture, you didn't go back. It was as simple as that. You know, it was a very hard world, you know, that I was involved in, and so you always won. You always found a way of winning, and the number of times I couldn't be on the outside of a riot. I just couldn't do it. You know, I had to be in the center of it. And you know, that they changed in the end, the newspaper I was working for, the city newspaper I was working for at that time, changed what I did, because the last riot I covered, that there was there were 12 police on horses, and they were just about to charge the crowd, you know, to try and disperse this crowd at this riot. And they came charging down towards me, and I was stood in the middle of the road with a wide angle lens, thinking this is going to be a great shot, you know. And I took the shot, and I'm thinking, I can't go left or right, I'll be dead. So I took the shot. I was taking the shot and hoping that they would swerve around me, which they duly did, you know, cursing at me at the same time for doing that. And the following day, one of the police commissioners rang one of the editors and said, "You've got to stop this guy doing what he's doing. He's going to get killed." So the next week I was put onto movies. They thought I couldn't do any harm on movie sets, you know. So I suddenly started meeting, you know, the likes of Sinatra and John Wayne and Soho Ann and all these. So it is what it is, you know. It is what it is, and I think in the end, but I think the problem was as well was that you never lose that wish for adrenaline. That was my problem, and in the end, I used to put myself into different types of danger. Why I did it, I don't know. You know, it's just something that's wired into me. That would, you know, I started working with wildlife, for example. So I would go in with lions and tigers, you know. And one time I was at this particular safari park, and I've been taking photographs of the gorillas, and a female gorilla had peed on me, you know, you know, and then I had to go into a tiger's cage. Now this tiger was at the far end, probably about, I don't know, 30-40 feet away easily. And so the keeper said, "I've just got to go and get something." So he left me in the enclosure, and went out to get something. And this tiger scented urine, you know, gorilla urine on me, and came over to investigate to see what I was, because you know, the tiger could see I was visibly human, but I had this gorilla scent. And so this tiger reared up and put his front paws on my shoulders. And now the fence, it was a wire fence. Now this wire fence is buckling at the same time. And the keeper said the immortal words, "Don't move." And I'm thinking, this is 500 pounds of killing machine. I can't move anyway. You know? So this tiger is looking me over just to see, you know, am I gorilla? Am I human? What am I? Fortunately, this gorilla didn't want me for his supper, or the tiger, I should say, didn't want me for his supper and just sort of loped off again. But it sometimes when you have a passion and sometimes when you enjoy adrenaline rushes, then it can take you over, you know. And when it became probably the times that I enjoyed the most were the times when it was full on, you know, something was happening. And I think that's what I enjoyed. It was a tremendous test for me to be an anchor on the funeral. You know, 6 hours 40 minutes is the longest I've ever, you know. We had a 10-minute break, comfort break, and that was it in 6 hours 40 minutes. And it was an incredible experience, and perhaps I shouldn't say that about a funeral, but it was genuinely the most incredible experience to actually do that and see whether I could do that or not. And I felt not perfect. I'm not a water concrete or anything like that, but I just felt that I was relaying history and I could put my point of view as well. And it was being watched by, I think in the end, we ended up with about 1.2 billion audience.
Wow.
It's incredible. Did you ever think you couldn't do it?
No.
Okay.
Didn't cross his mind. Responsibility.
Yes.
It is. I don't have confidence in myself. I've always had personal low self-esteem, quite honestly, in my life. But I have confidence in my ability as a journalist. And so, you know, and that's come through, you know, because I've always won. I don't know what it is like to lose, you know. And so I've always won, and so, you know, it's so there's you know, there are times, as you probably both know, you know, I had health problems at one time, mental health problems at one time, you know, and went through those times. And when I came back really into journalism again, it's what I call my pilot light. So that pilot light just switched back on again, and off I went. So I've never had problems with being able to feel, as I say, I'm not clever. I don't see myself as clever, but I think what I have is the ability, I hope, to talk common sense. And sometimes that's probably more important than anything else.
You're right.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, as a political correspondent, obviously things can get pretty heated and people are really adamant about how they feel. So if you're interviewing someone and you personally have a different perspective than they do you let that come out, or do you just keep your personal feelings to yourself?
You have to keep your personal feelings to yourself.
Oh, I think
quite
so.
honestly.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, things can happen at times, and I think I used to do quite a bit of work in Eastern Europe, in Albania especially. And I remember one day we were, I'd been asked to work with this female politician. And all the camera crews were very excited that she was coming in to be interviewed because she was stunning. You know, they're all saying she's very beautiful, she's stunning, and all they could see, you know, is the outward beauty. They weren't really concentrating on what she was doing as a message. And she came in and we started talking, and, you know, when we're doing the sort of the regular sort of things. And I asked her a question that I think she quite liked. I said, has your beauty really at times been a problem because people are looking at how you look rather than what you're saying? Yes, she said. You know, and it was almost like, at last, someone has asked me a question that actually, talks about me. And so she was married with a son, a 12-year-old son, I think, at the time as well. And so I said to her, have you ever worried that because of your commitment to politics, that it's harder to look after your son as well? And with that, in seconds, she burst into tears. And the cameramen, both looked in shock, and they ran out the room. And I just went over and just gave her a hug. And I said, everybody cries, everybody cries. It's no shame at all. And we became quite firm friends after that. So sometimes when you're working in politics, you never quite know what a reaction is going to be. I don't think you can influence a decision. I think you have to be quite resolute in stating how I see a position. The position I think at the moment, as far as this government is concerned, is that I think we've lost our way totally. That's my opinion right now. And looking at what's happening pound against the dollar, we thought a couple of days ago that we were going to have parity with the dollar. Sterling and pound was going to be parity. In fact, we thought it was going to go down to 99 cents. And that's never, ever happened in our lifetimes. In fact, where the sterling is to the dollar at the moment, the last time it was 1972. So there's a lot of concern going on in Britain at the moment that this could cause huge amounts of inflation. The biggest problem, as you all understand, is that imports coming into UK are normally priced in dollars. So that's going to increase the price of goods coming in. And obviously that's going to hit inflation again. And so there's this whole debate going on at the moment, which I'm part of as well, is what are we going to do next? What's this whole thing? And then, I'm getting signals coming through from different parts of the Conservative Party trying to establish methods, let's just put it like that, of removing Liz Truss as Prime Minister before Christmas.
Oh my gosh.
So all of this is going on, as we speak. And I'm thinking, this was supposed to be my quiet week, This is supposed to be my quiet week. So first of all, I get hit with an issue with that I've been asked to help out on, concerning the death of the Japanese Prime Minister who had his funeral yesterday, and there's been a major issue over that. So that came in, mid-afternoon, and then about a few hours later came in another message that I can't talk about right now. And I'm thinking, oh my God. and I actually text back, is this true? And only one word, yes. And I think, oh no, it's like, what do you expect me to do? And that's always a tricky situation, because if you are seen to be putting out negative messaging, that can very much reflect on your futures, personal safety, the whole bit. And so it's sometimes even in politics you have to walk a tightrope.
So how do you feel knowing that you have this confidential information we'd love to hear? Do you feel a lot of pressure?
I know. How do I feel at the moment? I will do you know, it's almost like a British Watergate. I don't believe this is happening, but I do. So at the moment, when you're hit with things like this, then I talk very quietly to people, just to see, you know, what they're expecting, and you know, how truthful is allegations. And it's a thing. We have a thing in Britain called Chatham House rules. And Chatham House is an organization where people can talk freely. They're not reported upon. They're not talked about outside the room at all. And it's a confidential method of gaining understanding at times, because sometimes people will, politicians will say thing, but will mean another thing. So there's Chatham House rules is a sentiment that is meant to say, you know, it's, you know, it's the same in America. You know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. You know, it's a very sort of similar, you know, type of feel to that. So the next stage is to talk quietly to people, and just because you know, there's definitely the one thing I can say. There's definitely motions already happening to try and depose the Prime Minister.
Mind-boggling. Mind-boggling.
It is incredible.
I just want to step in for a moment and first say thank you, Ian, for being, I loved it when you said responsibility, because I wish a lot of journalists over here had that same sentiment of reporting responsibly and not saying, I'm going to say this and then I'll retract later and it'll be on page 10. And also that you're absolutely correct when you do something that you passionately love. And age is just a number. It's what you feel inside your heart. So I expect you to continue with your amazing reporting. Could you do it to at least 300?
Well, you know, I often say that I say to my friends that I want to reach 100, but I want to become, you know, by that time I want to become a problem. You know, I want to be pushed in the bath chair.
But let me tell you the real news.
My friends, I want to become grumpy. I wonder what grumpy feels like. You know.
You'll be complaining because the real news isn't being reported. I'm telling you, child, you better listen to me.
I can hear it now. I remember the day.
Yes.
I can hear myself saying, but there's a lot I want to do in life, obviously. You know, there's no two ways about it, and you know, as you know, Jacalyn, we're talking about potential things now that I hope will create further value for what you're doing, and hopefully, DIANN, you'll be involved in, you know, this as well.
Thank you.
And I think, you know, that there's so much we can do now. You know, this is probably one of the most exciting times in communications. It's amazing what's going on. Do you know, I've been asked to be one of the compares on an event. I think it's in November, so I'll talk to you about it as well, in London. And the idea is that they're going to try and this organization, they're going to try and do 100 events it's like the Guinness Book of Records. They want to try and create 100 records in 14 days. And that they're not going to use the Guinness Book of Records to do it, but they're going to create a new blockchain, because apparently with the Guinness Book of Records, if you create an event where you want an arbiter to come and you know, check that this is a Guinness Book of Records, it only costs something like about $8,000. Wow. So they're wanting to create a blockchain method of doing 100 different challenges, 100 different records in 14 days via the blockchain. So, you know, as someone was asking me last night, you know, the technical side of something, you know, Jacalyn, that's your work. I've absolutely no idea what you do. It's just brilliant, you know. So I'm just very thankful. All I've got to do is just push a button and talk, you know. That's easy. That's the easy side, you know. All the different technical sides and the things that you're talking about with other people right now, you know, it's a different world to me, and it's partly explained, but do I really understand? Not really, you know. And I think yeah, so I can then use my age to defend myself. You know, I think 71, I don't need to know, you know, how it's done. All I got to do is I will do it. It's simple.
There you go.
There it is. And I appreciate what you said. Thank you. I do love technology. My dad was a huge technology person, and so it's got it in my blood. I was saying earlier on another show that I used to love to spend my money on shoes and bags, and now it's all on technology. That's what turns me on now. So.
and I think it's great, and I think, you know, the opportunities out there are immense, and different methods of communication now. And I think the beauty of it as well is it activates young people as well. You know, so because you know, there was a feeling at one time that young people were being left behind. They weren't being listened to. Communities weren't being listened to. And so now, you know, with things like fast channels or OTT, whatever it's called in America, you know, are really coming to the forefront as well. And it is the future. I mean, you know, this type of program and your whole sort of TV channel is the future. You know, and so I feel privileged to be part of it. You know, I feel quite humble because, you know, as I say, you know, for me, you know, it's only me. You know, that's the way I look at things. I'm thinking, my God, you know, I lost my way for a while, as you know. I had issues in my life, and I lost my way for a while, and I gave up photography, and I just thought, you know, I wasn't even sure what I wanted to do or anything at all. And I was very lucky that, so, you know, for about 35 years, I could push a button and get a reaction on a camera. So that was great. That was quite easy to do, you know. And then all I have to do now is talk, you know. So I suppose I've had a very lucky life.
Oh, that's beautiful. And that's such a great way to end our show. So thank you for coming full circle. I appreciate it. You have a very interesting career, and one that you have so much more to give. So please keep going. Keep giving.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have your information here for people who are on the radio. If you'd like to follow Ian, please go over to Facebook and follow Ian Pelham Turner. Thank you. And Diane, we also have your information. If people want to follow you, what's the best way?
Sure. Just you can follow me on Instagram, DiANNFLOYDBOEHM, BOEHM, and you will find me on Instagram.
All right. Thank you.
And other social media, but
she's around. You can find her.
That's right.
Our next show is coming up. It's Global Adventures, and we are going over to some part of Africa to talk about safaris and I think gorillas today. So I'm really excited about that.
So. Is Ian going to have some of that? Never mind.
No.
Don't talk to me about gorillas.
I can't even imagine that story.
For that smell. But please do check your spam folder for our newsletter. The Global Post went out just at the beginning of the show. It's would be sent from Dr. Jacalyn at USA Global TV. And that's all for now, folks. We'll be right back in less than 10 minutes. Thank you, everyone. Bye, Dia. Bye,
everybody.
Ian. Bye.